of my favorite stories, and one of my favorite images also. The deal is, this gentleman on the left built this submarine about 26 years ago. This shot also took over a year to get the photograph, but the gentleman on the left designed and built the submarine 26 years ago. The guy on the right is his pilot. The submarine will go down 1,200 feet underwater. This is not a toy, it's a real mini submarine. It's just very low tech. So I went to these guys and I said, can we take you guys, your submarine, all this stuff, and put it in a factory and recreate the scene of when you built the submarine all those years ago? I talked with a couple different foundries and they all said, absolutely not. This is like much too dangerous to have a bunch of guys goofing off on a weekend or two, like 2 days in a row. With this very heavy thing in this factory, liability, I think lately what's been happening in America, for whatever reason, a lot of people are getting killed at foundries because this is like heavy, big stuff, and you know, we're just delicate little creatures. People are getting whacked all the time, so foundries are very sensitive to having people farting around. So they said no. I eventually thought of, and I should have originally, because I'm basically the producer, I thought, well, I should go to the factory where they made it. So I went to the factory where they made this submarine all those years ago, and I said, can we do this? Can we bring this submarine that you guys made 26 years ago and recreate that scene of building the submarine? And they said, yeah, that would be neat. It took a year literally because the submarine was up in Alaska on a mission. Then it had like an annual overhaul where they tear it apart. Then the factory itself had, you know, basically there was giant pieces of metal in the middle of the floor right where I want to take my picture, and they can't just move it. This is a business. They're all busy. They had to use up that stuff. It took about 6 months to use up the stuff that was right where I wanted to be, which you're looking at now. Eventually we were able to create the composition you'll see here. This is the final composition, which is the little submarine. It's very much like the Corvette. It's very plain. There's not like a lot of interesting sort of photographer's statement. I'm not making a crazy statement about here's my interpretation of what it's supposed to look like. No, it's more like voyeurism in the sense that we're just looking at the scene. There's nothing going on. It's not, I would say, powerful or dynamic in the sense that there's no crazy angles or action. All that power I like to come from the story that is perceived in the picture and the lighting. So you can see, if you look carefully, you can see the battery packs on the bottom left, air tanks, pressure gauges, electric motors, you know, even a bucket of paint, and all this stuff is part of what came from the submarine. The paint I added myself, of course. As I'm going to click the button, what's going to happen, as you've seen before, it's going to almost look, which I think is kind of cool, like a caricature of a submarine. I like the idea that when people would look at this photograph when it's finished someday, like in a museum, some kid and his mom would be walking through the museum and look at this picture and go, wow, Mom, a submarine, you know, we should build a submarine too. I think that's so beautiful that I could make something that's so mundane, it's just a little submarine. It's nothing special. And turn it into this beautiful statement about, in this case, capitalism and free enterprise and engineering and following a dream and doing all the things that this man chose to do 26 years ago to build a submarine and use it as a business for all these years. The gentleman on the right, he's the foreman for the factory. As a matter of fact, it was his uncle who was the foreman for the factory 26 years ago, and his uncle is the one who literally rolled the hull from flat pieces of steel in the old days. The guy on the left, that's the pilot I was telling you about earlier. And that's Douglas. He's the owner-builder of the submarine. And that's the final photograph. Douglas is basically deaf. He doesn't realize he's deaf, but he's deaf. We finished the shot on Saturday. I think it was like 1 at night. It's really late. We're all tired. A lot of people were involved. And we all came back Sunday morning to kind of take the submarine back to where it lives in their machine shop down in Long Beach or something. And it was kind of cool. You know, Douglas came up to me afterwards, and I don't want to trip on cables. Said, you know, I'm standing here. He says, so how'd you think of the shot last night? What'd you think? Like, did it go okay? He said, yeah, it went really good. He goes, what? I said, yeah, it went really good. What? I said, it went really, really good. It was great. What? So I just gave him a little hug. I think we understood totally that he's a beautiful man. Ooh, he's such a beautiful man. And I love to share this story with other people about, you know, pursuing your dreams and following your passions. They didn't necessarily make a ton of money all this time, but they got to own a submarine and have it as a business. I mean, how cool is that? It's just, I think it's fantastic. As I explained to you guys before, I always include a little joke or trick. That's the little Beatles yellow submarine. And, you know, most people when they see these photographs, they don't get this tutorial you're seeing. They don't see the slideshow and the stories. So they have to figure it out. You know, well, figure it out. You know, but if you're in a hurry, well, then you miss it. But that's at your own peril. That's the inside of the submarine. It's very tight fit. It's a little scary. Now that I'm older, I'm definitely having claustrophobia issues kind of bug me, and I don't know, but the idea about being underwater for 4 hours in this tiny little submarine would be a little stressing. But they offered me a ride. I still have a ride coming. Also with the airship, I have a ride coming someday. I'm always reluctant to take people up on these offers, which is very generous. I don't want to be going to these different entities and saying, hey, I want this and I want that and I want this thing and we want 10 guys in this building and I want to ride. It's like, oh, whoa, this is too much. I really want to come off as professional to saying, I want to just tell your story, and what we could do to tell your story is what we need, this is what we need, which is a lot of stuff, but a ride is not necessarily part of it.